evening, everyone, and welcome to another live here at Iscah. Today's topic is extremely interesting, and we have a very special guest with us. So, I'm just trying to see if I can add her. Today, we are going to have Tanya Ginwala with us of Qualia Mental Health, and we are going to be talking about adventure therapy, nature therapy, and lots of exciting stuff, new stuff. So, I'm just trying to add her. Okay, I think she has already joined. Please give us a message in the comments if you both are audible or not. You receive my Hi.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So nice to connect with you.
Yeah, you too. I'm looking forward to the next 40 minutes or so, or however long we spend together.
Yes. So, I would like to welcome you to today's live. So, guys, this is our expert speaker, Tanya Ginwala of Qualia Mental Health, and she does a lot of work with nature therapy, adventure therapy, and just tremendous amount of work you're doing, Tanya. And I think I won't have words to complete all of that. So, can you share with us about what you're doing and your work, all about your work and Qualia, everything?
Sure. First of all, thanks, Suniti, for inviting me. I'll start with introducing myself. I'm Tanya Ginwala, and I run Qualia Mental Health. I'm a trained clinical psychologist, and since the past 3 or so years, I've been also training myself as an adventure and nature-based therapist. I'm very passionate about working with people with disabilities. So I also run a psychosocial support group for people with disabilities. And I have my own private practice where I see clients and also practice some nature and adventure-based therapy with them. So I see mostly young adults and teenagers and adults too, actually. But I'm also an experiential educator, so I work with groups and facilitate programs. Yeah.
Okay. So, like I said, doing a lot of work, a lot of great work, and especially your work with the disability community. It's like that's really great, very commendable. And I think you're one of the first people who I know started an online support group for regarding mental health, and this has become so important, especially during this time. We are only connected digitally, and there is no other sort of platform now. It's a really great step.
I'd actually started in person and we moved online because of Corona, but now we've realized we can also possibly reach more people online. So,
Okay. So, Tanya, can you tell us about nature and adventure therapy? It's very new for a lot of people, a lot of practitioners, and myself too. I must say, I'm sorry, I'm not that well versed with it. Like, I would not know. So, can you please tell us what is it all about?
Sure. So it is quite a new field. I think relatively, if you compare it to all of the other sort of therapies that have been around, this one would have a history of around 20 to 30 years, which could also be quite recent in that sense. So adventure therapy is, and I'm going to talk about them separately in a way because I want to also make the distinction between adventure therapy and nature-based therapy, right? So it's kind of divided in these two ways, and adventure therapy is the prescribed use of adventure and time outdoors, which for therapy, where you are engaged physically, emotionally, socially, because it's also done in groups, cognitively. So it's sort of a very holistic approach to mental health and to therapy. The nature-based therapy part is more about this. It's also known as ecotherapy. Some of you may have heard of that term. So it's more about also spending time in nature and just being aware of the impact of nature on ourselves and our health. And so there's this joke that at every adventure therapy conference we say that for as many people there are in the field, there are that many different ways of practicing, because everyone sort of brings in their own interests, their own influence. So it's an umbrella term for for all of the activities that happen within adventure therapy. So there's programs that do hiking, there are programs that do climbing, wall climbing, rock climbing. There are also programs that would do cycling, paragliding, so all of these different adventures. But again, the main thing is it's sort of the prescribed use of adventure. So it's very intentional. It's done with individuals, families, and groups. So there is that interpersonal sort of a factor as well when you're doing this in groups. The field of adventure therapy is originated from the study of experiential education. So while I was doing my master's, I was also doing a diploma in experiential education, and that's sort of what led me to the field of adventure therapy. Because as I was studying it, I said, okay, this is really therapeutic, and then realized that, there is a whole field out there and people all over the world who are using adventure with people who are struggling with anxiety, with addiction. It works really, really well with addiction, with low self-esteem, depression, all of these issues. So it is quite a dynamic and flexible approach.
Okay. So that is so nice to hear, because I really would like to explore this further. And thank you so much for bringing this to a lot of people here who will be viewing it, and they'll get a perspective about this. Maybe there are a lot of people who've been wanting to use nature or incorporate it in their therapy, because keeping it confined to four walls of a clinic is not for everyone, and clients also benefit from that atmosphere or the environment, especially with nature. Yeah,
definitely. And I also want to say that it's a large spectrum. So it could be anything from therapists sometimes have elements of nature in their office to like a 10-day self-supported backpacking adventure, or a trip. So it can be anything in between. So it would be an injustice to give a very narrow definition to it in that sense.
So what can be some of the benefits of doing nature therapy, adventure therapy? Like you said, it can be used with a wide range of issues, for a lack of a better word, I would say right now. You you talked about addiction, low self-esteem. So there are such a variety, what could be benefits? Yeah.
So like I said, all of those, right? There's addiction with anxiety. I've also observed it with teenage girls who had been through some form of abuse, with couples therapy as well, and what else? So even with depression to a certain extent, if people are able to be outside. Also with the geriatric population, horticultural therapy is very effective. Even with people with physical disabilities, I have 3 years of experience also doing adventure sports with people with physical disabilities. So that's another population. So there's adaptive adventure sports, which adapts all of these adventure activities for people with physical disabilities. So also with children with who have some kind of learning challenges.
Okay, so it can be applied across the population is what I'm understanding, and it can be molded in different ways. Like you said, it's very expansive, from using some of the elements in your own therapy sessions to going on full-fledged maybe an adventure, prescribed adventure out camp or whatever, like the way you make it.
Right.
So across the globe, what is the perspective sort of on this? Like, because I know you've been part of a lot of international conferences and programs, and you have the exposure from there, and you've contributed your own work out there also. So what would you like to say for that, like for this particular therapy globally?
Right. So I'm also representing India at the International Adventure Therapy Committee, and that's where I also get to see how different countries are, applying this and actually adapting it, right? Because each culture culture also has its own way of relating to nature and the outdoors. So, for example, the Australians call it bush adventure therapy because for them, the association is also with going back, going to the bush, which is like going back home. So it's sort of a kind of homecoming, and that's how they approach it. In the US, it's more about getting out and going outside, and so there is that kind of meaning attached to it. But I would say that so each of these countries is kind of adapting it in ways that they feel fits within their current mental health system. So I have been lucky enough to visit a few programs in the US, and where I've seen them adapting it in a sort of community-based support model where different groups, homogeneous groups, would come to their center, their outdoor center. So they had like a state run addiction support program where this group of people would visit the center every week and do different activities like going on hikes, doing wall climbing. And again, with addiction, the interesting thing is that a lot of them have not felt that natural high, so to say, unless they've used a substance, right? So adventure gives you that adrenaline and that kick without having to consume a substance, and that itself is so new. So I was really amazing to see how effective it was, with that particular group. There are also programs in the US that are more like backpacking based. So they would, some of them have a base camp and then they kind of go backpacking where they maybe go on a trail for 4 or 5 days and then come back to base. Some of them just are moving programs where they are just, backpacking for like weeks or months. So there are different ways in which it looks in that sense. It's also in the UK very active and it's been around for a much longer time.
Okay. So let's say somebody wants to get trained as an adventure therapist or a nature therapist, and you did say that there are two different, sectors altogether, approaches. And so how can one get trained or skilled in this?
Sure. Yeah, this is a big question, and there's actually a bunch of us writing a paper on training opportunities for international adventure therapy and looking at how. So there are courses in the US and in the UK and Australia that would just like a master's in adventure therapy. When I found out about it, I was already halfway through my master's and also had studied experiential education and that methodology. So I maybe can just share what my path has been, and that would give an idea maybe also of how we can do it, because right now we don't really have access to a full-fledged degree that is offering this yet, right? Hopefully in the future we will, but as of now, some of us already have like the therapy skills and we just maybe need some other skills. So we just have to fill in the ones that we don't already have, right? So for me, it's like, imagine like a Venn diagram of like 3 circles, and one is the therapy aspect. So for example, there's a master's in clinical psychology that I've completed, and then also a 1-year course in narrative therapy, which is what I specialize in. And then there's the group facilitation aspect, which is the experiential education part, which teaches you how to create a safe space for people in groups, because group facilitation is something we don't really learn during our masters, right? Not a lot of us learn how to work with groups. So that's one aspect. And then there's the outdoor skills if you are interested in adventure part of it, right? So I have also done a wilderness first responder, which is like a 10-day, like a first aid course with very detailed, intense first aid course. So that when you're out on field, if there's any kind of medical sort of emergency, you know how to handle it and you can either evacuate or treat it. And that's a very important part, because I think already we're working with vulnerable populations. And so safety becomes even more important, right? So there's the physical safety aspect here, which we don't have in our regular indoor therapy. We have the emotional safety part, which we have to take care of. But here we also are responsible for someone's life. So I can't stress enough how important it is to also have that sort of training if you're going to take people outdoors and away from easy access to medical facilities. And I'm also trained in a mountain leadership course. So because I plan on also running backpacking trips, and for that there are certain skills you need to be able to guide in the mountains safely. So also that is just the more of the adventure therapy training part. In terms of nature-based therapy and ecotherapy, there is an amazing collective called Healing Forest, which also promotes forest healing and forest bathing. So Shinrin-yoku, which is a concept that's coming out of Japan. And there it's more about mindfulness in nature. And so I've also been trained in that. And there is a group of people in India as well who trains people in that. So just doing nature connection activities. And again, you need to adapt that for your client to meet the client's therapeutic goals. So all of this is done very much with the intention of meeting the therapeutic goals that you are deciding for your client, what they want for themselves. So it's not random. It's sort of really designed with that intention.
Yeah. So there are a lot of things which are going into this, right? And so, like you said, there is also that wilderness first aid which you have done, which is also essentially, very, very important, because we are coming from a completely different school of being, therapists or counselors, and we might not have any exposure to this, which is needed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
One additional thing I want to ask you before we move on to the next part of whatever we plan for today's discussion. How much is one's as a therapist your own personal sort of fitness or personal this thing with important? Because we have a desk job, to be honest, because if you're sitting in the clinic, you're sitting, right? Again, I'm sitting, I cannot emphasize more now. Online also is sitting. So this is more of moving about, and if you go mountain climbing, that is going to be very intense for you also. Plus, you're taking care of the entire group and making sure of the safe space and the mindfulness. So is it taxing? I mean, I'm just asking.
I think for me, this is a great question. It's always, something that I think about, that a lot of my work has included a lot of sitting, and they say sitting is the new smoking, which is terrible because all of us are sitting a lot. But fitness is so important, and it's something that I do try to work on a lot. Although there are times when I'm also getting caught up with adapting to this situation where suddenly all of my clients are online. So again, I'm just seeing all of them on a screen. But it is very important. Especially, so again, it depends, right? What activity do you want to do with your group? If you're doing more of ecotherapy stuff and you're doing more you want to facilitate healing walks and want to do Shinrin-yoku, you don't really need a lot of fitness. So it depends. In my work with people with physical disabilities, where I was taking them on tandem cycling expeditions from Manali to Khardungla, or taking them on treks, even one-day treks, which are not very tough, but you just have to be able to run up and run back down if someone needs something. So you are actually, that way your physical fitness is very important. So I did luckily get a chance to also be outside a lot at my last job. And even now I see a lot of my clients outdoors as far as possible. And I check also, it's not for everyone. Again, it's not like I just insist that everyone I see outdoors. We kind of have that conversation on what is their relationship with nature and how would it be for them to maybe meet outside. For example, right now, there is a client who wants to meet in person, and I figured it's actually much safer for us to meet on the hill near both our houses rather than in my clinic. So that's why that was not the question you asked, but I just wanted to say that you have to be quite flexible.
Yes, yes. No, so I wanted to ask that because as I was listening to everything you were saying, so this aspect really, came out to me, and it's very important. I mean, there are a lot of modalities. Like I myself, I practice art therapy, and it's very flexible, and we accommodate as per the client's need. But still, it's got that element of sitting or whatever. And here there is that additional. That's what I felt. So I really wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, and also that the main thing I think I want to stress on is that when I do this work with people, and I'm sure you can relate to this, I really need a lot of time in nature by myself to be able to do it well. Because my relationship with nature is also what is helping to facilitate this transformation, which is possible with clients. So it becomes difficult. Like I've had moments where all of my time outside was only with clients, and then I realized very quickly that that's not working, because I need to have my own, you need to fill your own cup before you can kind of be in that space with clients. So it is also that balance of time for yourself, by yourself, and then time with clients in nature.
Completely agree, because for me also I need that time with my own art materials and to just like get into it fully, and like you said, release everything, fill your own cup, then you can be there as a as a facilitator or a therapist for someone else.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you, like right now we are all at home locked up, and if some of us are lucky to have a small garden or whatever, balcony, maybe some connection with nature, that's really healing. But there are a lot of people who are currently struggling a lot in terms of being stuck in locations, not being able to be home, not having space, just managing and figuring out this lockdown period, as it is slowly unraveling also for all of us. So do you have any suggestions or any kind of an activity which they might be able to do at home, maybe from an adventure or nature rather eco perspective, like
Sure. I have been thinking about this a lot, and a whole bunch of us are thinking about how we also need to adapt our practices for the current times. And firstly, maybe just to see, just to pause and look at what your relationship with nature is, and when you're not getting this time, also how it is feeling for you and how you're experiencing that. Because I think a lot of us have taken for granted that we can be outside, and so now a lot of my clients and people that I speak to are saying that, wow, we didn't realize how much being in nature is actually really good for us, right? Having said that, I recognize that not everybody has the means and space, but I think to begin with, just to get more aware of whatever, even just outside your window, to really look at the life outside the window. Because there have been all of these videos initially, I think, about how with the pandemic, suddenly all of the animals are like completely being able to really be outside and all of this, but also just to observe whatever you can around you. So one is to get more observant, and there'll be so much life that you see, which you were not maybe seeing before. Secondly, something that I've started doing is also just getting plants, and just getting one plant or two plants, and even if it's a money plant, whatever it is, I'm still learning, and I have some friends who sort of help me also to know how to look after these plants, but maybe even just that is such a beautiful experience, to be able to do that. Thirdly, a lot of us are revisiting moments in the past when we have been in nature, and also just remembering those moments as well. And again, we are also looking at the screen a lot, right? Like even you and I are now having to see our clients online mostly, or teaching workshops online. I know you have just been teaching for the last few hours, and what happens is, even if you're able to just step out for a walk, and even for our eyes, it's just good to be able to look and see in the distance. So I make it a point to once a day just like be under the sky, even if it's for 5 minutes, it doesn't matter. So take that stroll downstairs, whatever it is, whatever little space you have, of course with all of the safety measures, that. And also because even being in the sun, like in the morning, is so important, even in terms of vitamin D and getting that sunlight, because we really do need it, and it affects our mood, it affects our overall well-being. And so even just doing that. So I think it's really little things right now. A couple of my friends are also, and I are also like thinking about where we want to go after this, or so maybe planning those trips. Yeah, so important, so important.
Like I would agree to this. These days have been too much on the screen, and earlier, like you said, it's very, I think, a hard truth that we had taken going out for granted. And last month or two, I've been only home, so I've been taking more effort to like sort of be a part of my own garden, and even if it is just to clean the leaves or just take a walk or whatever
Right.
it is. Because of the cyclone, there's been a cyclone that has hit West Bengal, right? So, because of
Right.
the cyclone, even we have very bad network issues, and it's been raining consistently. And I just missing out on going for a walk outside for like just 2 days is feeling exhausting, because that stepping out for a bit can itself make you feel so calm. I mean, I myself can say that now when you are.
So what are some of the practices that you do for yourself? Do you go out for a walk, or what do you do?
Yeah, so I do go out for a walk. I make it a point to do that every day. If I can in the morning, then great. If not, I do in the early evening when it's still light out. And just taking a walk and looking at everything that's there and trying to get involved with the garden is, I think, or whatever, like you said, even get one plant and get involved with it. Try to take care of it. So even if it's just cleaning the garden, watering the plants, that itself can, be very much disconnected with all of this chaos that is going on. Like connect to the network, figure out this plan, fix the schedule. So it's very, one direction, like viewing बहुत close, and even looking at a distance can be helpful for you. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, thank you so much for sharing that. Guys, I want to tell you guys that if you have any questions for Tanya, you can just leave them now. So, we would like to take your questions. Also, Lakshmi here says that barefoot on earth being helping with them. Yeah, so that's really helpful.
Thank you, Lakshmi, for that. That's so important. So important, and I do this a lot on my forest healing walks as well with groups. And this is again another very simple, accessible way for us to connect and to also regulate ourselves emotionally at this time, and physically.
So, does any questions? We can take the questions then. You can just leave them, Tanya. I wanted to ask you, like, it's sort of given that all the senses need to be involved when you're out there with nature to sort of feel it a lot.
Right.
What would you do with people who might have some sensory issues? Like you said, you do work with population with some limitations or special needs or disability. So any kind of sensory issues, how would you sort of overcome that?
Yeah, it's actually quite easy to adapt activities that we know for people with physical disabilities, right? So often when I work, especially because I work a lot with blindness and visual impairment, we use a lot of touch, we use a lot of sound, and a lot of the initial activities that we do in forest healing is also to awaken the senses to our surroundings. And sometimes we do that by actually blindfolding people. So we're already doing that with people who can see. And so we have different ways of adapting it, which really works. Again, sometimes I'll choose a trail if there's someone with a physical disability and having trouble walking. I would choose a trail which is maybe easier and not this flat, where there are spaces to sit. Do very simple things like just having a sit spot, where you find a spot and sit by yourself. We do activities like making mandalas and using, collecting dry leaves and flowers and whatever we find, and actually creating some art together. So you're also, there are so many different ways, like we use poetry, so a lot of those are just really possible with almost anybody. In that sense. So it's combining mindfulness and meditation with being in nature.
Okay,
nice.
okay.
Yeah.
That is a question I had. Victoria Silva, I'm sorry, I don't know the proper name, but is asking how does it help clients in sessions?
Yeah.
But helping in terms of, I think, maybe emotional regulation.
So
maybe you can just.
Even the adventure activities are often what we do is based on what their goal is in treatment. We have activities that we facilitate which become metaphors for what's happening in their life. So often when they are introduced to a completely new sort of activity that they're unfamiliar with, and often what will happen is that the way we're responding in our everyday life, we will also respond in that way in the activity. So what we're doing is we're drawing parallels between what is happening with the activity and how we usually are in our lives, and that is called transference, and that's really the key of looking at. So it's a lot of design and work and thinking about how we can really make kind of kinesthetic metaphors for what's happening in the client's life already, and then having them experience that. So either they practice a new skill that they want to learn, or they reflect on what has happened in that experience and how it connects. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, but we're using a lot of metaphors, and that really is, I think, what creates, that change for the client, that shift in perspective.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Lakshmi is asking, share more about adventure therapy and addiction, some stories and your insights.
Sure. So actually, it's so there's a ton of research as well, I wanted to say, for how adventure therapy works with different groups. It's available online. Most of it is also available for free in articles and stuff. I will share that later with whoever's interested. But it's found to be very effective with addiction. So I'll give an example maybe of what I experienced at the Santa Fe Mountain Center in New Mexico, when I had this group of say 12 to 15 people who had experienced different addictions and were now in a de-addiction program run by the state of New Mexico. And they came to this center where they were doing wall climbing that day. And I remember distinctly just one story of this guy who had never tried wall climbing and was mostly using meth and cocaine, and had been on it for many years. And so I remember him climbing the wall, and he was actually quite fit, so he was also able to managed to reach the top. And I remember he came down, and of course there's the group, so there's also this aspect of the support that you're getting from the group, because the group is cheering for you. And I remember he came back down and he's like, okay, I want to do this again and again and again, which is like so much what happens in addiction. You experience something and you really feel like you want to do it more. But this time it was, like I mentioned earlier, it was like this more of, first of all, the first time he's experiencing this when he's not on a substance, right? And that itself is so powerful, because otherwise he's feeling very numb, he's not feeling as responsive and stimulated by his environment. And so for him, this was a real breakthrough, and I remember at the end of it, there was a circle of sharing, and he really said, I really want to do this for my family, and I realized that there are other ways to experience what I'm looking for, but that I'm not okay with the way that I'm doing it now. So just that, right? It's something I don't think would have happened in a conversation the way it happened with his experience, because there were many different things at play over there. There was, again, he was physically engaged, chemically in his brain as well. There was different things happening, right? There was adrenaline, there was so dopamine, there were so many different neurotransmitters and hormones at work. There was the interpersonal aspect where he felt supported by his peer group who were cheering for him, who were encouraging him. There was a safe space held by the facilitator where he could honestly reflect on his experience and share, how he wants to take what happened there and apply it to his life. So there are many addiction programs, especially for young adults and teenagers, where they do backpacking or they do similar such, climbing. Climbing is really effective. So yeah, I hope that example maybe helps.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, it gave a lot of, understanding of what are the different aspects that can go in and how one can experience the change, which I think you're right. It could not have happened that way in a conversation, definitely. And that built a lot of insight also in the client and the awareness, like you said, with all the.
So it's working at multiple levels, basically, is what I'm trying to say, right? It's working at so many different levels.
So we have one more. Okay, this is not a question. I think Lakshmi says, share some transparent stories.
Right. So that was a transparent story, right, of how this was possible. There's also little activities that I've seen being done in. Maybe I'll share my own also experience actually with the backpacking trip in the Blue Mountains of Australia, where after a conference I was a part of a group of 10 people who were set out on a 1-week backpacking trip where all of us are training as adventure therapists or already practicing, and so this was a chance for us to be participants. And I think anyone who facilitates loves that because we are like, yay, now we can sit back and be the participant and experience this. And it was led by two amazing adventure therapists who are now probably in their 60s. From Belgium and from France, and have been some of the initial sort of researchers in the field. And I think what basically we did was we just went backpacking and camped out every night at different spaces, and it just brought out so much of the group dynamics also. So every time it's not about this big bang of a moment where, oh wow, aha, like this has happened. It's more about noticing your presence in a group, what you bring to a group. So there is this whole aspect of the group dynamics, what other people are evoking in you, because that's where you're seeing how you are affecting others and how they are affecting you. So there's that aspect. I remember a moment where we were also camping out in caves, which I was sure that so many generations of people had lived there before, people of that land, and that itself was also so powerful. So it's a lot about seeing your place in the larger scheme of things. So every night we would sit by a bonfire and actually reflect on these larger questions of what was coming up for us. So it created for me a moment to reflect on what am I here for? What is my place in this larger context? Because when you're in nature and you are seeing the weather changing, like there was a storm, like and a hail, and we are just sort of all of us just crouching under this sort of tarp, and we are trying to cook our dinner, and suddenly the fire's out, everything's out, and we're just laughing, like hilariously just laughing and going nuts. And thinking, if you can laugh in that moment when there is this storm and you are all there just looking after each other and keeping each other safe, you'd learn so much about how you can be in that moment and what choices you can make. And it wasn't also this force, like what did you learn from this sort of thing, which is what I loved about it. It was just creating a space where you could share that. And you were not forced to constantly make meaning of what is this teaching you. But there was just so much going on for each of us in that. For example, your my ankle got twisted even before this whole thing, and then even during the thing, I remember my ankle got twisted, and there was someone there who was constantly kind of able to support me, who was trained as a first responder. I wasn't at that time, so there was this again an opportunity to ask for help, which some of us are not good at, right? So it creates these moments where you can ask for help, where you can help someone, where you learn how to rely on yourself, but also take care of each other. When suddenly there's a turn of events, you learn how to navigate, how to trust a leader. So every day there would be a different leader. So I'm just trying to give you an idea of what are these little micro skills that you can learn. So you learn how to follow, you also learn how to lead. And I think that was a real example for me. It made me very, very sure that this was very, very powerful for me, because I remember there was 3 hours where they said just sit by yourself and come back after 3 hours, and you could just wander into this forest and be wherever. And I sat at an edge of a cliff, and it was just like watching the weather change every 5 minutes. And so again, it like made me reflect on impermanence and how life is changing all the time, how we are changing all the time. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what it would be.
Amazing. I'm so glad that you shared both the stories, and that really added to people listening here right now also to what all of this might entail. So many things going on together, and I think power packed in terms of healing and reflection and introspection and just understanding our place as human beings, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Lakshmi is asking what's next for your journey. So Tanya, if you could just tell about that quickly, because I think we are at 45 minutes and
oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I didn't realize.
Yeah, I can't see any of the comments or anything for some reason. But I think what I'm working on right now is working on a backpacking program for adults and teenagers, and have managed to get the skills, but also now still working on the design and how I would want to facilitate that, and maybe come up with certain homogeneous groups. So there could be people who are struggling with anxiety, and I would work with them separately and then come up with these sort of different groups to work with. But basically my main, I think, mode is so maybe how my adventure therapy practice looks in the future is to do a lot of backpacking trips, just do like short one-day hikes, overnight trips. And this means that I also see my clients indoors, and then maybe after 10 sessions or so, through those sessions, we work on what adventure we want to plan together and what we want to work on. And they are very much part of designing that and planning that. So it works in that sense. But right now, I'm looking at slowly encouraging my support group to move outdoors. They're all very cozy and comfy indoors, so I hope one of them is here, I know. And they will also want to try being outside, and also do a lot of forest healing walks, not just for people who are in therapy, but also just for anyone who wants to connect with themselves and with nature. So yeah.
I should tell you to keep something for us therapists, like a dedicated trip, like a backpacking trip.
Yeah, so important.
Others, and I think we all need that from time to time, right?
Yes, definitely.
So, if people want to join your support group for PWDs, like how can one join? I just wanted people to know about it here in the video itself, because they'll be watching. And guys, we will put all of Tanya's links to her page, everything, where all the information is there. Definitely, it'll be there in the video. But still, if you could just mention about that a bit more in detail.
Yeah. So there are a couple of resources, right? One is, if you know anyone with a disability who wants to join the support group, it's a free support group. We meet right now once a week, but officially once a month. So please spread the word. if you're don't have a physical disability, but you still want to be a part of a support group, you can DM me on Qualia Mental Health. That's something I'm also just wondering if that would be interesting for some people. There is now an adventure and nature-based therapy group on Facebook for India. So look up Adventure and Nature-Based Therapy India. And also be a part of the International Adventure Therapy group on Facebook. It's an amazing, amazing bunch of people who are constantly sharing resources and opportunities for learning and for working and all of the current research in the field, all of that. So, and they're very, very friendly and very accessible and generous. So that's one thing I think. If any professionals are interested, that's a good place. I will be posting on my page what programs I'm doing in the future, so they could just also follow me on my handle.
Okay. And you also have an open group on Facebook, right, where you are also sharing a lot of stuff. So I'll be putting that link, guys, or with the video itself. So you can go to the group and you can, be a part of it. And, Tanya, you're doing so much great work. So I really would like to tell everyone to just go check out Qualia Mental Health, the page, and give it lots of love and all the work that you're doing. It's great. And hope, we can keep a group for us therapists. I'm more excited.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to do that. Yes.
Planning it on the live.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So thank you so much for joining me today. I had a really great time talking about, adventure and nature therapy. Learned a lot of things myself, and would really like to be part of this too myself. And thank you so much. I'm really, overwhelmed with everything that you shared. It's so beautiful. So subtle and powerful at the same time.
Thank you so much, Suniti. Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening. Bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye. Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Tanya, once again.
Yeah. Bye.
Hi, guys. So I hope you had a good time today on the live with Tanya. It was really so amazing and, something very new for a lot of people. So stay tuned on the page, and I will be sharing all of the links with this video once I upload. So for any questions, you can also directly DM Tanya at Qualia Mental Health, the page, or you can even DM us for any queries. All right. Have a good evening. Bye, everyone.